Senate has resumed the second batch of the screening of ministerial nominees. Well, at the moment, the Senate has reconvened and then resolved into committee of the whole, where the second batch of the ministerial nominees will be screened. Earlier, the Senate had screened Uchechukwu Oga.
To commend you specially for your contributions to nation building. Mr. President of the Senate, my CV is before you, so I don't think it is necessary for me to highlight anything because I tried to abridge it so that you can quickly look at it. So once more, I thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Kabiru Ibrahim.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I have my chairman of the party, former chairman, former councillor, my colleague as a governor in 1991-93, when we were booted out by the military. I just have one question, because we're supposed to ask questions, not to praise you, but you deserve the praises. A PhD holder in chemical engineering, a first-class honor in chemical engineering, BSc, and a distinction in WASC. I worked with you for 2 years as governors. We know what we can do, and you are a former minister. What could you say your best achievement while you are Minister of Science and Technology? Thank you.
No, you will respond after maybe 3 senators ask questions. Senator Aliu Magataka Dawamako.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, the nominees and also former governor of Ebonyi State. Abia State. I think I shared the same question with the last speaker. But in a more elaborate, maybe in a different language. My question is, having been a minister of a key ministry for the last 4 years, what would you be remembered for as being your best achievement in the last 4 years in this ministry? Thank you.
Senator Samegu.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me congratulate my brother, His Excellency Dr. Boni on a first-class material. Your Excellency, my question is with regards to the NIGCOMSAT-1, Nigerian Communication Satellite, that was launched sometime. And immediately the satellite was launched with fanfare in China. It got missing in orbit. And Nigerians were worried. $340 million was used in building the satellite. And on launching, it got missing in orbit. And that satellite was supposed to provide communication, broadcasting, and broadband efficiency in our system. I want to know, even though it was done before your tenure, as a minister, Nigerians will want to know what has happened to that orbit, that satellite. because the Minister of Science and Technology during that period, Alhaji Al-Hassan Zaku, told Nigerians that what happened was with that satellite was that the battery failed. The solar battery refused recharging, and that was why it failed. And according to him, he said that it was packed in space to avoid colliding with other satellites. Today, Nigerians want to know what has happened to that satellite. Have you recovered it? Or is it functional? Or it has been forgotten? So that the whole amount of money spent on that satellite will now become like a project that has failed again in Nigeria. So, abandoned project. So I want you to know what has happened. As a minister, in this current and the last dispensation, Nigerians want to know what has happened to that satellite. Thank you very much.
You can answer the questions.
Yes. Thank you so much. With respect to my achievements as Minister of Science and Technology, there were several achievements, but I would just like to summarize them very briefly. The first major achievement is that we were able, working with my colleagues in the ministry, we were able to increase the awareness of Nigerians of the importance of science and technology to nation building. Today, everyone can see that whether you listen to the radio or the television or read newspapers, people talk more about science and technology. We have also done something that is revolutionary for our nation, championed by the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, and that is to move Nigeria away gradually from our economy depending on resources to our economy depending on knowledge that is innovation-driven. This became very necessary, and actually this is something that should have happened at independence. And we must thank our President Muhammadu Buhari, for his interest, his commitment to making sure that this happens, because we have seen that our economy had depended on commodities, initially agricultural products, and then later crude petroleum products, that is crude oil and natural gas. And what we have seen is that all the recessions, without exception, that we have had in the country, they arise as a result of a sharp drop in the price of commodities in the international market. And this journey, which we have started now in the country, we should have started at independence, which the Chinese have done. They celebrated 40 years of it last December. South Korea did it, Japan did it, and so on, is to now help us to now ensure that our economy is knowledge-based and innovation-driven and no longer completely dependent. Because what this will do for us is that we have suddenly become a nation that imports virtually everything that we need. And this is not helping us. We have seen the adverse effect on the value of our currency, the Naira. We have seen the adverse effect on the number of people who are not employed in the country. And so many adverse effects. So, but right now, the nation is moving in a direction to move away from a commodity-based economy to a knowledge-based, innovation-driven economy. This will take time, but I want to just give you just a very simple example. One of the agencies under the supervision of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, NOTAP for short, National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion. One of the mandates is to assist people to protect their intellectual property. And you do this through patents. And all over the world, you use patents to measure the creativity, the innovativeness, the inventiveness of any nation. In 2015, when I became minister, only 6 patents were obtained through NOTAP. The following year, 2016, my first full year in office, that number more than doubled from 6 to 16. Now, in 2017, 1 year later, the number in 2017 more than tripled that of 2016. We moved from 16 to 50. And by last year, the number grew to 58. So this will show you that there is increased creativity in the nation and that our economy is gradually moving towards becoming a knowledge-based economy. Mr. President, I think these two will represent some of the very major achievements that we made, just to keep it short. The satellites that His Excellency Senator Sam Egwu talked about, yes, this was built by the Chinese, but when it had problems, the Chinese replaced that satellite at no cost, to us. Thank you.
DSP. You raise your hand. Okay. Senator James Manager.
Mr. President, seated as chair, my respected colleagues, James Manager, Delta South. Mr. Nominee, although you have made some attempts to answer the questions, particularly that question that was asked by Senator Gaya, and I think reiterated by my dear friend from Sokoto, but because you are looking at your CV, you are a first-class brain. And for 4 years, you have been involved in the science and technology subsector of this. How do you
the question from distinguished Senator Borofis, Professor Borofis, Deputy Majority Leader of this great Senate of our Federal Republic.
We're all aware that the national policy on education has made very strong provisions to emphasize the need for the teaching of science and technology in our various institutions at various levels.
We are working very hard and we're getting good results, but with drugs, you don't make these announcements when they are early. You have to wait until they pass through. It's normally a very long journey. The pharmacists here will understand this. It's normally a very long process to pass through all the certifications before really you can say so. But we have done very well in these areas. In the area of information technology, we are working, and I want to also inform you that we had proposals before the Federal Executive Council, it's just that it could not be taken before we research and innovations were.
We have not seen what we'll be able to do without young, talented guys. So thank you, Mr. President.
You can respond to the questions, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, the most distinguished Deputy Minority Leader. Yes, there is no country that does not have security. Further, know that there is no other way we can become truly great without applying science and technology and innovation to our nation building. And we encouraged that inventor the way we have also encouraged, because there's another program whereby we set up a when you
distinguished senators, I am profoundly honored to stand before you this afternoon through the grace of God and the benevolence of President Muhammadu Buhari. I'm a medical practitioner by
Africa and around the world. With this record of excellence, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I will recommend and urge our distinguished members to please commend Senator Mamora to bow and depart from this channel. Quote.
Dealing with the public, which is all different gamuts coming from the private sector. The governor had a vision which was primarily anchored on infrastructure. And thank God we were able, in 8 years, we were able to deliver on the governor's vision, spearheaded by the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. What this brought about and taught us is the fact that infrastructure is a panacea to most of the problems that we have in the society. One thing I realized, construction work, whether civil or building, is a large employer of labor, skilled and unskilled. At a point in time, on different sites within Ogun State, we gave employment to over 30,000 people that were earning their daily living.
You have an experience. That's number one.
Followed, and of course, this makes investors to be wary. So it's very important for government to honor its obligations, because there's a lot of money in the private sector. Especially there's a lot of money outside the banking sector, in the informal sector, which of course CBN acknowledges. We can harness this if you can get the confidence of our people and they know that they will make their money back. We've done it successfully in Ogun State, and I think we can replicate it at the federal level. The next question is similar to that. Say whether the policy is working or not. I must say that things are getting better. Projects that are being done before are being continued rather than being abandoned. There's no point saying that we must start new projects with every new administration when there are ones that are uncompleted by the former ones. If you have continuity, then it will augur well and better for the country. But most importantly, you ask what I would do if I had opportunity anywhere. One thing I've found that, as I say, it also leads to the lack of funding. Instead of spreading ourselves thin, we have X amount, and we want to spread it over 100 projects. balancing the geopolitical situation in Nigeria, we can concentrate on a few things so that we balance it out, but at the same time, we embark on projects that we can finish within a fixed time. I could give you an easy example. When I became commissioner in Ogun State in 2011, there was a project that was awarded by the federal government, the road from Ibadan to Abeokuta via Akpata, Odeda. The project was awarded in 2010. As we speak, that project is yet to take off the ground. It's funding problem. But the contract subsists in the ministry. That means the contract is still on. So rather than spread ourselves thin, if we could pick projects strategically to balance the geopolitical equation and say, look, within 4 years, we can finish this, we can finish this, those are laudable achievements instead of spreading ourselves thin. I think that's the way out, and we'll get value for our money that way. Well, leadership. Leadership is not so much a problem in this country. Everybody is a leader in his own right, whether in our homes, on the streets. And what we need to ask ourselves, am I doing it right, even when other people are not there? The spirit of shortcut, we need to eschew it, take it out of our national life. If people are not looking, or because I'm privileged, rather than go and make a U-turn 300 meters down the line, I want to quickly turn left and join the other lane. These are things that we need to. So it's not so much leadership in one place. It's the leaders in all of us. Where we find ourselves, are we doing it right? Even when people are not seeing us. And I think that's what leadership is all about. And lastly, I think the question is about building collapse in Nigeria. It's symptomatic of the society, building collapse. You will find out in most cases, the buildings that collapse all over this country do not have involvement of professionals. I would say out of, I don't know, people cutting corners. Oftentimes, people will come to you, make a design for me, you do the design, you do the stuff. They want to use the professional so they get the approvals. Thereafter, they abandon the professional to go and do. And where concrete is the easiest to abuse because it's plastic. It's not something that you load today and it damages today. It flows. So the deformation is slow. At times it takes years. So when you do a defective project, say, that one we didn't use any professional and it's staying. It encourages and reinforces such people to go and do another one. Of course, when it reaches a critical point, the building will collapse. So that is the problem. We need to go back, and I think the professional bodies are working on this. I know of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, they're working with all other bodies, the engineers, the builders, to form a code such that even during construction, the states, the planning regulators will go around and ensure that the professionals that signed the drawings, that got the approval, are involved. If they are not, such projects should be altered automatically. If you do this, it will reduce the effect of building collapses in Nigeria. Thank you.
Senators Theodore Oji, Lawrence Rujagpo, and Senator Ama Michael Naji. In that order, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Theodore Oji Ochendo. I represent Abia Central. Mr. Potential Minister, you are welcome. And my question is this. If you go into the Executive Council and the President, and this question is without prejudice to your deployment of posting, and the President gives every minister a task, and that task is to suggest one way that these are our girls, the Chibok girls, that are still held hostage, can be brought back. What will be your own suggestion? Two, Number two, see the problem we are having with the executive at times in terms of budget, which is our main function, is late submission of proposals from ministries. If you are posted to a ministry and you have that problem, what will be your solution? Thank you.
Mr. President of the Senate, sitting as chair, I am Lawrence Ebujapo, representing the productive people of Bayelsa West Central District. I want to join my colleagues to congratulate you on your nomination. Fortunately, we share some commonalities. I am also just the immediate past Commissioner for Works, Bayelsa State and Infrastructure. So,
thank you.
Unfortunately, I may not have had the opportunity of crossing ourselves because most of the times I don't attend the National Council on Works for obvious reasons. Because I believe that some of these things need to be left with the state to do. And I don't think that there's need for us to have that kind of conference to discuss. But anyway, but that is not the subject matter for here now. Now, the question is, we have housing deficits in this country. If you are confirmed as a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, what will you do differently to ensure that we bridge this gap of housing deficit? I'm aware that we had the Shagari housing scheme in those days, and some of those buildings are still within Port Harcourt, which was our former state where we came out from, Bayelsa State. What will you do to ensure that this issue of housing deficit, because the problem of housing is not just a matter of, we must not look for the 3-bedroom flats, the duplexes for people to stay in. So what will you do to ensure that we reduce this issue of housing deficit in this country? My second question is general. We have just been told that the federal government has banned the eating of leather, pomo. I will have asked the Minister of Science and Tech, but you are also a minister, and you can be assigned to any portfolio because you have the competencies of being assigned. What do you think we need to do to take forward this policy so that the derivatives we need to derive economically and otherwise from the ban on eating of pomo, because those who eat the pomo derive benefits, but now I want to deprive them of that benefit. How do we translate this benefit to economic benefit to the country? Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Michael Nachi.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. My distinguished architect, when I see fellow professionals in the building industry, I'm always happy. I've looked at your CV and your attached documents, but it does appear, I don't know if it is right for me to say it is an oversight that since you registered with ACON in 1998 and the Institute of Architects in 1992, I have not seen your practice license, and you've been handling the big jobs. Of course, you know we frown at that. Secondly, assuming tomorrow you are assigned to Ministry of Works, and let me borrow Professor Jerry Ghana speech. If you're architect, you architect well. If you're engineer, you engineer well. If you're a quantity surveyor, quantify well. Now, in the Ministry of Works, per se, which you know, let us not hide the fact that based on what I've said, corruption is deep there because those who don't know anything anyway claims to know it, and government is wasting a lot of billions due to that aspect of it, which of course you know where I'm going. Now, how do you intend to help this government that is preaching of corruption every day to overcome this professional corruption? Because some particular profession in Ministry of Works claims that they are there. Whereas you know, a business administrator spends the money, he still hires accountants to audit his spendings. But in our own construction industry, it is not there. So how do you intend to put correction or put end to these things we have been battling? Thank you.
Sorry. You can respond to the questions.
Thank you, sir. The first question this round is on Chibok girls. I must first admit my lack of competence in such matters. But from the layman's point of view, I think technology is so advanced that could help us, because even on Google Maps, there's something you call street level mapping. You could stay in your room and be looking at the streets of America or UK or anywhere in Europe. I know there's some military technology that's been deployed in warfare, maybe by people who are more advanced than us. If we could seek their help, we could begin to locate where these people are without jeopardizing lives. We could now evolve a strategy. The first thing is to locate where they are. Then we could evolve a strategy on how to release these people. It could be carrot and stick, some incentives. I don't think I can go further than that. The military experts would know. Late proposal of budgets. I can't say much about what has been happening, but I say that from my experience in 8 years, working in Ogun State. In fact, for our budget, we have a particular date. It's second Tuesday in November. Whatever date it is, you must present budget to the House. And we were able to do this for 8 years. Second Tuesday in November, the budget is presented. And before the year ends, oftentimes, the governor will sign the budget on 31st of December. But it gives the legislative arm about 7 to 8 weeks to consider the budget. We could have something like this in place at the federal level, so that Mr. President picks a particular date and everybody works towards that. Like, look, I'm going to present my budget every year, first Tuesday in November every year, second Tuesday, everybody works towards that. So, because it's the same amount of work that you do when you start and finish, that's also you're going to do. So if you know you're working towards a particular date, everything will have happened before that November date. We did it successfully in Ogun State for 8 years, and I think it's something that can be borrowed at the federal level. Housing deficits and bridging the gap. You see, housing itself is a social problem. And that's the first thing that we need to get right in this country. Sorry to say, maybe there are about over 100 senators there. The desire for everybody will be different. That's why everybody talks to the architects. What we tend to do when we are doing mass housing is to do one size fits all. And that's why it has not worked. Just like the distinguished senator said, there are some houses that we inherited as administration. Despite the deficit, people don't have, they are abandoned, nobody wants to live there. Because people were not consulted before the houses were built. Location, type of houses, and all that. So, what I was taught in the university for housing, before you even embark on any housing at all, you must have something like a questionnaire to the intended targets. So it has to be localized. If I'm going to build houses maybe in Lagos, I'll design my questionnaire for the people around there. If I'm going to build in my village, maybe somewhere like that, I'm going to design the questionnaire for those people. You need to know what people want and how they want it. This is the only way to solve the housing problem, rather than build one size fits all that nobody wants to occupy. You say ban on pomo and leather products. I think it's a good thing to ban pomo because we import a lot of leather products in Nigeria, which, with the amount of cattle that we consume on a daily basis all over the nation, there's plenty of leather products that can come out of that. And practice the same make perfect. If we start the leather works, so it has to be incentives. The tendency is that because the pomo is cheaper, it's for the lower class people. So maybe some incentives, something to take them off pomo, maybe provide cheaper fish or something, so that the hides of the cattle could be harvested from the abattoir and turned to leather. My professional colleagues, you mentioned practice license. Of course, I even served on the board of ACON for 3 years. So I do have a practice license. I don't think it was important to put there, but I've been practicing since 1992, and I do have a practice license. Thank you. Corruption, I cannot say that because that's a pointed accusation at the ministry and the people there. What I can say is that because you mentioned administrator, accountants, and all that, there's peculiarity, especially in the civil construction industry.
Mr. President, we have 5 more minutes, please.
Okay, sorry.
5 more minutes.
I'm trying to answer the question, sir. Well, when you want to do bill of quantities for road, for instance, you can't give it to a quantity surveyor. It's called BEME, Bill of Engineering, Measurement, and Evaluation. It has to be done by engineers. Maybe that is why you think that ministry is a bit opaque. You know, there are some peculiarities with it. I can't talk further about it because I don't know when you say they're corrupt. Thank you.
Is that the general view? Okay. Distinguished colleagues, is it the view of the Senate that he takes a bow and go? Those in favor that he takes a bow and go say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Order.
Now the next nominee that will be screened by the Senate is the immediate past Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu. Well, the nominee is a Nigerian accountant, a writer, a former journalist, and a former Minister of Education who was appointed minister by President Muhammadu Buhari on November 2015.
Malam Adamu Adamu, the former Minister of Education. Malam, on behalf of My colleagues, I want to welcome you to the Senate chambers.
Thank you, sir.
We already have your CV, and I will urge you to highlight those issues that you feel very strongly about, that this Senate needs to take note of, and those things that we think are important but are not in the CV for the benefit of the Senate in this process of screening and eventual confirmation. So you are invited to address the Senate.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senate President, distinguished Deputy Senate President, distinguished senators, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me, but I think I made the CV quite short, noting only the very important facts. So I'm quite happy as it is, sir. I don't have anything to add.
Senator Uche Lilian Ekwunife.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Uche Lilian Ekwunife. Mr. President, I represent Anambra Central. I'm from Anambra State. First of all, let me congratulate the minister for the nomination by Mr. President. Having been the Minister of Education for the past 4 years, I would like to ask you, can you just tell the Senate what is your assessment in the state of public primary schools in Nigeria? If you had to assess
State of
the
primary.
public primary school in Nigeria, how do you assess that in terms of your performance and your achievement for the past 4 years? My second question is this. What specific steps have you taken?
What?
Specific steps, actions,
Yes.
have you taken or you intend to take to make sure that the academic curriculum in our primary schools, especially computer education, is in line with global academic standards? These are the two questions. Thank you.
Senator Samego.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to congratulate the minister, my colleague, before, for being re-nominated by Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
It shows you have done well. But Mr. Minister, I have just 2 short questions. You know that open universities all over the world is used as a means of accelerating or increasing tertiary education because of the inability of the conventional university to admit all that would want to enter the university. What do you think should be done by the NUC to improve on the curriculum, the conditions that will enhance the quality of open universities, considering their limitations now? The second question is a very short one. The crave by politicians.
Grave?
I said the crave now.
Okay, yes.
by politicians to ensure that appointment of just vice chancellors of universities located in their area reflects their geographical area is stopped. Because I know that federal universities all over universities all over the world are international institutions. Vice chancellor can be appointed from anywhere. That is how it used to be before. But now, universities in Bauchi will make sure that somebody from Bauchi becomes the vice chancellor. University in Owerri will make sure that Owerri man or people from the south becomes a vice chancellor. That has become very current now, and that is not what it's supposed to be. What's their position on it? To make sure that qualified vice chancellors, irrespective of where they come from, are appointed to become vice chancellors. Thank you very much.
Please, you are okay. Senator Oriolo Aderele Adeye.
Thank you, my president, my leaders here present, distinguished senators. I want to congratulate the nominee, Honorable Adamu. Being nominated this time around again shows that you have performed well in the first term. There is a question that was asked the other time. Somebody was asked to mention the problem we are facing, but this is a very good place to ask that question because you have been in the education sector before. I will try to give you the answer and how to tackle the problem. That is what I want from you.
Thank you very much.
The answer is this. The problem, by my own note, is indiscipline. The problem we are facing in this country, you will see that we are sitting here since to treat one systemic failure or the other. In education sector, in aviation, in security, everything. But I discovered that the problem is that of indiscipline. How do you want to tackle the problem of indiscipline in this country? Because if you note, if you go down the history lane, the only two governments that we can say has really made serious impact along this direction and where we are able to tackle corruption is when the present president, Buhari Diagbon regime, when he was in government, you know, the issue of indiscipline was tackled and corruption was a little bit tackled. The same thing, the little time Muritala spent in government, that 6 months, he used, I'm giving him the lead way. For the 6 months, we are able to tackle the indiscipline. So my question is that what will be your proposal or suggestion to how we can tackle the issue of indiscipline in this country? Thank you.
You can ask, you can respond to the questions.
Mr. Senate President, with your permission, let me start with the last question. Even though the senator has very helpfully answered it, he's asking, how do I intend to tackle the problem of indiscipline in Nigeria? I think this is a question for everybody here, senators, the executive branch, and the criminal justice system. And it is something that goes deep in the psyche of the Nigerian. I believe, unfortunately, the examples we cited Muritala and General Muhammad Buhari then as military head of state, I think the tactics used will suggest to me that nobody will succeed in fighting indiscipline in this country and corruption until he uses extrajudicial means, simply because we don't like obeying orders. I think probably I should stop here, because whether it is ethical orientation as practiced during the time of Shagari, or whether it is democracy at Koboko Point as it was done in Singapore, because Singapore was like Nigeria before, but they had a government that would not tolerate it. And the methods they used were very draconian. And I believe now it is one of the most disciplined societies in the world, not in the third world. So probably that is the only way. I think it is for the government, just like we have now taken the issue of fighting corruption. Corruption and indiscipline should be fought together by this government. And I hope the National Assembly will try to help Mr. President when it comes to the war on corruption. I believe so far this government has fought the glaring cases that have come out or that have been detected. But what we need to do is to enact laws and then be very, very ready to implement them so that they will fight systemic corruption. Because while the government is fighting people who have committed corruption, confiscating property and jailing some, corruption is still going on. Therefore, I think what you need to do is to devise means of fighting the corruption that is in the system. So I hope I have answered your question, sir. And my respected, he is not my colleague, my respected elder, distinguished Sam Egu, has asked about the appointment of vice chancellors. And I know what he means, because I'm always under pressure by people insisting that the vice chancellor must be somebody from their area. Unfortunately, this is no longer in the hands of the university, in the hands of the ministry, because since the time the universities fought for autonomy and they got it, I think even the president has no hand in the election or selection of vice chancellor. I think the process is clear enough. When there is a vacancy, it is advertised, people apply, and then they are called for interview, and the university council selects the vice chancellor. Before, they used to select 3, so that they will send it to the minister will send it to the president for selection. Now it is just for our information. So actually, I think we have passed that stage. The question is for the councils to answer, and I think most of the councils are doing the best they can. And on the issue of open universities, I think it is now the trend in the world. It's just not a question of what the NUC is going to do. It's what the ministry is going to do in order to expand the resources available to NOUN, National Open University of Nigeria. And I think, as I said, the trend all over the world, if you take most of the universities that are opening now, private or state universities, their population at best is 5,000, some up to 10,000. But the National Open University now, the population is around 500,000, I think 400 or something. Therefore, it is our own desire and policy that we should expand the resources available to the National Open University. The first questioner is on primary education. Madam, the question of primary education, I must admit before this House, is a sad story. And when I came as minister, I assembled a group of experts. We sat down to look at all the problems facing education. We came up with 10 points. And the first is out of school children. And the second is question of basic and secondary education, which is what you are asking. I think I don't know actually what to tell the nation, because it is the linchpin of education, and it is the one that is most neglected. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me now, as I answer you, it is not the responsibility of the federal government. And I tried my best to get the states on board through the National Council, on the National Economic Council. So I agree with you that the situation of primary education is very, very bad. But what should be done is perhaps the Riot Act should be read to states. The Federal Ministry of Education has done the best. We have done the study. Just before I handed over the affairs of the ministry, we concluded a study. We have about 10,475,031 out-of-school children in Nigeria, and it is still the highest. But the work to reduce this is for the states. And the federal government is not in a position to force the states to do so. So I think the National Assembly, the states probably should take this matter to the National Council of States and the National Council of Education, where governors are. And I think the nation should decide, because whatever the Federal Ministry of Education does concerning university education, concerning technical education in our polytechnics, will all come to naught without a very good foundation from the primary schools. Madam, I have answered your question.
Distinguished Senator Ezekiel Ayuba Dimka.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Ezekiel Ayuba Dimka, representing Plateau Central. Congratulations, the nominee.
Thank you, sir.
In the first place, I have one single question which I would like you to respond. There is unemployment vis-a-vis this sort of redundancy in this country. What can you do if you are appointed as Minister of Education?
Minister of what, sir?
Education. What economic policies do you suggest to improve on what we're facing now? That's the question.
Thank you, sir. May I answer it, sir?
Yeah.
Senator Ahmed Anjuma Guje.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, President. I have two questions, sir. Number one, I looked through your CV and I've seen a situation where you are doing two very, very important and vital duties simultaneously. Apart from being a minister, according to your CV, since 1999 to date, you have also been a speech writer and special assistant to General Muhammadu Buhari.
Yes, sir.
That you can.
I, Malang Baba Shahuri from Borno, Bashir Salihi Magashi from Kano, Honorable Timi Pre Martin Silva from Bayelsa, Hajia Ramatu Tijani Aliyu from Kogi, Otumba Richard Adeni Adebayo from Ekiti State, Alhaji Abdullahi Mohammed from Nasarawa State, and Mr. Sunday Akindare from Oyo State, 8 of them. So we have already circulated the CVs of we will continue, we'll work on the CVs, and we can even take more tomorrow. But these are the ones we start with tomorrow morning. As the day progresses tomorrow, we can have the copies of more CVs distributed. Today we have done with 10, and I think we can do with same tomorrow, or even better. Distinguished colleagues, the Senate is hereby adjourned till tomorrow, Thursday, the 25th day of July 2019 at 10 a.m. prompt.
Well, this is where we'll round off today's edition of the live broadcast of Senate plenary for the screening of the ministerial nominees. We'll now hand you over to our studios for the continuation of the scheduled program for the day. I am Ignatius Nkwo, and on behalf of the outside broadcast crew, we'll say bye for now and join us again by 11 o'clock tomorrow for the continuation of the second batch of the screening. Bye for now.